And welcome to our monthly meeting, this December 8th, is it? 2021, our regular board meeting of the King County Regional Homeless Authority. Naomi, if you can take roll.
Will do. Carrie Anderson. Nate Caminos. Paula Carvalho. John Chalmanack.
I'm here.
Gordon McHenry. Harold Odom.
Here.
Damian Patnaw. Adrian Quinn.
Here.
Michael Ramos.
Here.
Sarah Rankin.
Here.
Simha Reddy.
Here.
Juanita Spotted Elk.
Here.
With 7 members, we do have quorum. And for the record, Damian Patnaw, Gordon McHenry, and Nate Caminos, to our understanding, will be attending at 3 to 3:15. Thank you, Harold.
Cool. Thank you, Naomi. So like all meetings that we're doing with the county, and especially ours, King County Regional Homeless Authority, all meetings are public, are open to the public. And we record everything from written, verbal, in the chat. So it's a public record. Members will be muted, attendees will be muted throughout the meeting, except for the public comment section. Board members, we only ask that when we have discussion that you use the chat function that's just below on your screen, depending which platform you're using. But those are really the only rules that we're going to go over right now. The second is our land acknowledgement. Our land acknowledgement has been not the 2 paragraphs that we've been hearing throughout the county. This is the land of, but I think we should do something more in depth. My presenter for today has counsel had a family emergency. I'd just like to take a minute or two and just go through those members who are here and see, is that something that we should be continuing? I should be continuing calling on other members to do presentations. So we can just do a quick popcorn maybe and say yes, no, or how's it going?
This is Adrian Harold. I think it's a great idea, and we should continue the practice from my perspective.
Thank you, Adrian.
This is Sarah Rankin. I agree.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, I agree as well.
You, Semi?
Yeah. And this is Juanita Spotted Elk. I totally agree.
Thank you, Juanita.
John Chalmanack agrees.
Mr. Ramos?
I agree as well.
Good, thank you. So the second part of my presentation was going to be, as a Native American, how do you feel with people asking you or speaking for you? We heard Danielle Winslow, who could pass as a Native American, who worked for Mother Nation. How did it feel to be in that venue and speak for Native Americans? I'd like to ask Juanita to give us maybe 2-3 minutes and tell me, how does it feel if I'm speaking for you and you're not present in the room?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It's a blessing to be a part of this circle and the work that's been going on. And to answer Harold's question, I believe that this territory is Coast Salish, and I was taught by Ray Williams and Coast Salish from Swinomish, and the work that he did helped me in reclaiming my identity and my understanding of what little I know, and to be able to have someone who is very familiar with this work in a land acknowledgement. And I remember what's his name? Johnson. He's not here no more, but he did that. And I know that Colleen Echohawk had something to do with him, helping him understand that. So it varies, and it's always good to get input from others, but it helps me to get grounded and say a blessing. To me, it's a blessing. It opens that door in this work, and to get help, from Creator, and acknowledge the land that we are on is Coast Salish, and to acknowledge their presence, and this being their territory, and honoring them. And, it's a beautiful way to be, and it's humble for me to always be a part of that work. And I believe it's just something to always, I didn't know who you had in mind, who was going to be here to do that. There's many elders. There's probably someone from Mother Nation or Chief Seattle Club, and different organizers that might know somebody. And I can think of some of the theory of change retreat that we had in the beginning in different stages as part of the theory of change work. Ray Williams did that work in the decolonization retreat that we had in the beginning. And that was very beautiful, very powerful. It was an opportunity. It was amazing for me as part of the racial equity work through that lens, and social justice, to be able to share that sacred work, and bringing everyone together. And sorry, somebody was trying to call me, but I really am grateful. And to ask an elder, there was another person that did that work. As you recall, we did that in the beginning with the People's Institute, and the racial equity work that in that time. And I'm thinking of the elder, but my mind is, I forgot his name. Him and his wife do excellent work. They work with Mother Nation, and he has also worked with Chief Seattle Club, and a lot of their cultural work that they've done and different things. So he opened us up in that work there and sang a song. It's very powerful. It really grounds me to be able to have that opportunity to share our history and to remember the past, and be able to come together like this, and which is very sacred, and the work that's being presented. And having a prayer song is always moving for me, especially with the history, and being able to share our culture in different capacities. So there's many ways to do it. So I think it's a beautiful thing. And for me, it puts me in a space of honoring and humbleness, and knowing that I'm connected to people in this community, which is so diverse, and to honor all the cultures that live here. So I hope that answers your question, Harold. I think that is something that it's very powerful. I've seen Mother Nation in different capacities with the city of Seattle and some of their organizing work, to have someone from the area who opened that door and shared a lot of different things. That was, it was very beautiful. So anyway, that's all I have to say for right now, to keep it short. Harold, you're on mute.
I cannot stand that mute button, I swear. But there's no right or wrong answer for me. It's always uplifting to give someone the stage or the spotlight to educate us in areas that, for myself, I need education in. I grew up just down the street in California, and for the life of me, I don't know why that we in California, the school districts, and throughout my life, I had no idea about Indigenous people, First Nation people, and moving up to the Northwest, and it's a blessing and an eye-opening to learn about different cultures, more than just Black, white, Hispanic, or Chinese, or whatever the typical minority or So it's always a blessing, and thank you, Juanita, for taking on short notice. I'm not going to call anybody on and say who didn't show up today, because I'm trying to not burn bridges. But we're going to have public comment. And before we go into public comments like 2 minutes that you'll have for public comment. And if you could place your name and the city you're calling from or the city you're from into the chat, we'll start building a queue and pull from that queue. You'll have 2 minutes to make public comment. So I'll give Naomi a minute and she'll tell me when I can start public comment, and then we'll go from there. But in the meantime, maybe we should do consent decree on minutes from November. Has everybody received the November minutes?
Mr. Chair, before you
Yep.
call for a vote on the consent agenda, I just want to acknowledge that member Carrie Anderson has joined. And I put that in
Thank
the
you.
chat, but I want to make sure that it is clear. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Welcome, Pastor Anderson.
Let me take myself off mute and say God bless and thank you and happy holidays to everyone.
Great, great. So did everybody receive the minutes from November?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and I'd be happy to make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
This is Sarah Rankin. I second that motion.
Thank you. Naomi?
Carrie Anderson,
Yes.
Nate Caminos, Paula Carvalho, John Chelmanack,
Yes.
Gordon McHenry, Harold Odom,
Yes.
Damian Patnaw, Adrian Quinn,
Yes.
Michael Ramos,
Yes.
Sarah Rankin,
Yes.
Simha Reddy,
Yes.
Juanita Spotted Elk,
Yes.
with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 4 absentees. The minutes are approved.
Thank you. So we'll go, we're going a little bit behind, but we'll go into the public comment. There'll be 10 minutes for public comment. We'll open the queue now and we'll close it at 2:23. So it'll be 2:33 we'll close the queue. And is there anyone in the queue for public comment?
Yes, at this time, we have 1 person in the queue for public comment. I just want to remind folks that you can also raise your hand if you would like to provide public comment, or you can put your name in the chat along with the city you are commenting from. And we have Bill Curlin Hackett is the first person who will be commenting. Bill, at this time, you should be unmuted.
Greetings to all of you. I really don't plan on being a public comment or even the only one in every one of your meetings, but it is good to talk to you. I just want to alert you to one thing that you may or may not know. RHA has started some working groups, one of which is on vehicle residency, and we've met several times already, and we're urgent about our work. Toward that, the city of Seattle did put some money in to continue our work as vehicle residency / scofflaw. We've recently been getting some attention and spoke with the National Alliance to End Homelessness this week, which surprised me that they called. Their focus is on unsheltered homelessness and especially West Coast vehicle residency. They have an event in February. They've already invited one of our team, Jen Adams, to be a speaker at that event in February. So I think with this focus of national attention, it might help us with even getting federal money, but I also want us to be as informed as the national organizations are about vehicle residency and its place in our crisis and remedies that we're working on and the still slight funding that is going toward it. So I know all of you feel the same as I do about wanting to alleviate this and address things in a new way here in King County. So thanks again for your work, and we'll keep you as informed as we can. And if any of you are going to that NAEH conference, you can say hi to Jen.
And Mr. Hackett was the only person in chat or in the public comment?
That is correct. At this time, we have no other public commenters.
So we'll leave the public comment window open until 2:33, and we'll move on with other business. And I just want to point out that I would thank the staff of King County Regional Homeless Authority. I know you've been doing an excellent job in going out and getting boots on the ground and seeing what's going on the streets. And one of those things that you brought back to our attention, and group you've opened up, is the vehicle residency group. So I commend you on that and applaud you at the same time, both in both. So the next thing we'll be moving on to, we'll be doing the CEO report, and Mark will be presenting that and some other things that will be wrapped up in those as well. So Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to largely just be talking about operational updates, and then we're also going to provide an updated budget briefing. I want to emphasize briefing. We are not asking, I believe, for a vote today, but we will be in January. That has to do with the we don't yet have the governing committee meeting timed or scheduled. We have a hold. It is in January. I just want to make sure that those two things are lined up, and that everyone has the opportunity to provide the appropriate comment, et cetera. So Meg and Tiffany, will be leading us through that. I'm going to share my screen briefly for the first portion of this. I just want to give you a sense of who works here. I don't think you've had that option. Can everybody see that? Awesome. So as of today, about 27 people work here. That is very exciting to me. A person who was a staff of 1 for a number of weeks, and then a staff of 3 for a couple months. And so every day we add more people. I am just pumped. So I just want to give you a sense of who's in what area. So the executive office, which is sort of my direct team. So myself, Erin Bryant-Thomas, who's the Director of Equity and Justice, Helen Howell as Deputy CEO, Catherine Wells, who is our Executive Administrative Lead, and Naomi C., who's my Special Assistant. We also have Ann Martins, who is the Director of External Affairs and Communications, and Nigel Herbig, who just started as Intergovernmental Affairs Manager. In the program team, we have Peter Lynn as Chief Program Officer, Shani Jones is our Procurement Coordinator, Carol Mizuguchi is the Grants Manager, Lisa Gustafson is the Senior Advisor. We have Tony Machacha as our Capacity Manager, Alex Ibrahimi as our Performance Manager, currently overseeing our Coordinated Entry System, Christian Santos as a Program Specialist who needs to send us a headshot, Christian. Nika Payne there are a couple of missing headshots. I'm not just ragging on Christian. Nika Payne is a program specialist who has been doing incredible work over the last couple of weeks. Nika has been detailed to a lot of the contract stand-up. So shout out to Nika for stepping onto the team and then immediately stepping out of role and doing some really dope work. Raphael Hartman is a program specialist. Olivia Hados is a program coordinator. Tiana Brave is a program specialist. See, there are more people who still need to send us some headshots for our presentations like this. In the administration division, we currently just have Meg Barclay as our Chief Administrative Officer and Tiffany Brooks, who's our Finance Director. A huge shout out to that 2-woman team. They do incredible work every day, managing a set of incredibly complex and wide-ranging processes. Like I have seen Meg put together furniture and then step into a meeting on the budget. And so just a huge shout out to those folks. Our sub-regional planning team, which is actually part of my office proper, but we talk about often separately because of the importance of their work. Currently, that team is led by Alexis Mercedes Rink, who is the sub-regional planning manager. Paul Tan is the South King County sub-regional specialist. And on Monday, Sparrow Carlson started as the Seattle sub-regional specialist. So welcome aboard, Sparrow. Our community impact division is also small but mighty right now. Owen Kafes is leading as acting chief community impact officer. And we have recently hired a data asset manager. I did just approve some other hires in that division this week, though. So soon Owen will have some more support. And then we have the Office of the Ombuds, and also a mighty team of one, and someone who started on Monday. So welcome to the team, Katara Jordan, as the Ombuds. So that I just, again, wanted to give you a sense of like who works here and, sort of what their roles are. Although we are in startup, and so everyone's role, it depends on the day. Anyone can kind of be doing anything. Our staff by last pulse is about 73% folks of color, and a number of them identify as folks with lived experience. And so I think that we are also proud of that as we continue to attempt to build a team that is reflective of the communities that we serve. And so I will pause there before we segue into budget. And Mr. Chair, I see that your hand is up.
Mark, can you please go back to the presentation?
Of course.
I think this is very important because it's part of our branding and shows the your logo.
Oh, sure.
One thing I noticed, but did you?
Yeah, no. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is the work of one Ann Martins, who, and just so folks know, right, like we were using sort of a royal blue and like sort of a square for a while. I did that on my second day in PowerPoint because I was like, something has to, like, we have to put something on paper when we send the thing, right? Anne was able to secure grant funding because we, just so everybody's really clear about how we use public funds over here, we don't have money to pay for like fancy, like, come give us brand strategic advice. So we are not using public funds for that. We did get a grant, which we are extremely grateful for in order to do two things. One, do our branding. And so that logo at the bottom of this slide is now the official logo of the County Regional Homelessness Authority. And that team has been super helpful. The design team we've been working with has been super helpful and just, helping us to craft, images and colors and color palettes, right, that are inviting. And then they are also, and this is, really exciting, I bet, for a lot of you who are tuning into these routinely, they're going to redo the website. And I'm also jazzed about that. So the website will be a lot more accessible. It will be a lot easier to find the things that you care about, and to ensure that we are able to be as transparent as we'd like to be, and that folks are not sort of winding through the website looking for a recording or trying to figure out, when the next meeting is or where the dashboard is that'll show them X, Y, or Z data. So going to be excited to debut that for you all as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any of the other board members have any questions? Comments?
All right. Well, then I would invite Meg and Tiffany to join me so that we can chat budget.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Just a second while I get set up. And share screen. All right. Can everybody see the PowerPoint? Is that showing up?
Yes.
Great. So we are.
Sorry, Meg, can I interrupt you already? I apologize. For the record, I'd like to note that co-chair Nate Caminos has joined. Welcome, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being with us today. Sorry, Meg.
No problem. And I'm joined in this, as Mark said, by Tiffany Brooks, who is our finance director. And I think this might be her first meeting as a presenter. So I just want to make sure to give her some recognition. So we wanted to give you an update on the budget as the Seattle City Council has approved the final budget. And so we have some updates for you, and there are still some moving pieces we're confirming, but this is our best information right now. So just a quick, just to get that, sorry, before we go into, so we've got items that will be for action for you in January. The way we're sort of framing these up is sort of our final budget and spending plan. And then there were some provisos and earmarks that were enacted by the city of Seattle that are, there's some policy discussion to have around those sort of conceptually, although they are all related to things that we were sort of already planning and anticipating being a part of the work plan for 22. So big picture, our budget is about 93% operating, 93% programs implementation between continued programs and new programs, and 7% operations of the authority itself. Just a pretty slim operating margin when you consider most of our most of the program operators are at about 10% operating to program costs.
Maybe if I could just interrupt 1 second. I start asking this from everybody. Any new words like proviso, some people use it different in the city or the county, and any acronyms you use, please spell those out for us, please.
Sure, no problem. And actually, we do have definition of provisos and earmarks later on in the presentation. So we will definitely get to that. Thank you, Harold. Okay, so our overall overview of the budget. So the continued programs number is still around $118 million. Incremental changes that have, so changes to sort of those continued programs are basically just additional funding provided. It's about $37.5 million. And just wanted to note here that this, the Seattle City Council budget consideration included, added about 1.125 million of ESG from the COVID allocation, the city's ESG COVID allocation to the budget. We expect a significant increase to that amount overall, as which will carry forward into 22, but is handled outside of the approval of the 22 budget. So there's about $1 million that was pulled into the budget as a part of the discussion of programs that need to be covered, but we do expect a significant increase to that as the 21 year is closed out and we have a better idea of what that number is. We'll have more information and we'll come back and report with an updated total amount of ESGCV that we're expecting for 22. Additionally, we had the two most notably, we had the two programs that we had requested funding for: peer navigation and high acuity non-congregate enhanced shelter this year. The city council didn't fund peer navigation, but did actually, while there's no money coming to the RHA for high acuity non-congregate shelter, that you can see in that second footnote that there's $5 million for that purpose that's actually being allocated this year to the county to establish some high acuity beds, but will then be transitioned over to the RHA in future years. So beginning in 23, we expect to see that money in our budget. This is the same breakdown here of the ongoing continued programs by program type and number of contracts that we've seen in previous presentations. And as you can see here, we're super grateful and happy our operating gap has closed. And so we are fully funded for operations as we budgeted at this time for 2022.
Can I just say one thing about that?
Yes.
So I just need to double click. That's a big deal. That was the thing that Meg and I were extremely stressed about. And so I just want like the whole board to hear how important it is that like that operating gap is closed. And you know, we're very grateful for the action that the Seattle City Council took on that front.
For sure. Okay, so moving on, these are a description of some of the ads that came in through the council and the mayor and the council budget process. So as we were saying, so we had the additional admin that we were already expecting in the budget proposal that you saw, that 811, for example, in the mayor's budget. And then the city council added another 600,000 for our operations, which again, we're super relieved about. And then there are other additional programs related to things like operation of new capacity for tiny home villages, safe parking, other expanded programming, amounting to a total of about $32 million. So within that, we had a number of, so what you see sort of in the big picture, sorry, in the past, we see like getting a certain amount of money for programs. And in some cases, there are provisos or earmarks that are placed on that program on that funding to more explicitly direct where it's going to go and how it's going to be spent. And so here we have and Tiffany Brooks cannot overstate how amazing it is that, well, first of all, she's just amazing. And second of all, she has this really amazing encyclopedic knowledge of the city budget process and the whole structure of how funds are allocated and expended. And we would be very at sea without her. So just throwing that out there. Yay, Tiffany. So provisos, we have the definition here. It's a mechanism that council uses during their budget deliberations to impose restrictions on appropriations. And they're included as a part of a council budget action. In this case, we have, for example, the first proviso was of all of the $3.6 million allocated for COVID mitigation, it was specified 800,000 of it was to be spent for modifications and services at youth engagement centers. And the other one was, there's of that ongoing funding that you saw coming from the city of Seattle, 10.7 million of that to be used for tiny home villages. That is actually continued funding for tiny home villages. And we were, as you've seen before, our expectation was always to continue level funding for all existing programs that are currently being funded by the city and county of Seattle and King County. And so that's not a change to what we were planning to do. The next couple of slides, which you have, I'm just gonna skip over them, but they have some more information about those provisos and the language that was provided in the budget action for your review and a little bit more detailed information. The budget earmarks next would be, there are 3 earmarks. An earmark is a provision that's inserted into a discretionary spending appropriation, directs funds to a specific recipient. And so these are the 3 earmarks that were included in the budget this year. And there's some more information on those in the next 3 slides. So that is, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, can I think there's one nuance that I would add before we, and then one bridging thing before we turn it back to the board for conversation. Meg, is it okay if I?
Of course.
Would you go back to slide 12?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to just bring the board's attention to the nature of these earmarks. They are not, and this is important for the policy question you all need to deliberate. They are not earmarks that are fully binding in their language, right? So And you'll note that in the first line, for example, in that first one, maintain a program for vehicle resident outreach and parking offense mitigation, and flexible financial assistance for vehicle residents, such as the scofflaw mitigation program, right? So while these do name programs, and obviously that indicates some legislative intent, they don't bind in the sense that they specifically direct the authority directly into a contractual relationship with a specific provider. But they are what we refer to as such as language. And so I just want to make sure that folks are aware of that. As you received in your packets, the memo that you got, the policy conversation that you all are, authorized, empowered to have, right? Like by virtue of where you sit in relationship to this organization, is whether or not in any passage of this budget, you would like to consider whether or not the approval of the provisos or approval of the earmarks is in any way, shape, or form limiting to your vision of how the authority would operate. As we note in our, sorry, Meg, we can lose the slide. It's just like, that's not, and thank you, Meg. So as we note in Meg's presentation, and also consider either the provisos or such as earmarks to be operationally or to impact our anticipated FY22 work plan. I just got a little flash that my internet connection is unstable. So if I need to repeat anything, please do let me know. That total budget that is, outlined, right? Like we anticipated that the things that, particularly around, so for example, funding the existing operations of the existing tiny homes, right? Like that's a thing that's in our FY22 projections because we stepped into this saying we're going to level fund all the programming in FY22. So there's no operating impact. And I just want to be really clear about that. Like we're not lifting these up to you all in a spirit of disagreement with them. We are lifting them up to you all because if I don't do that, that is malfeasance on my part in my role, right? Like to staff you all in making a decision. The options that you would have would be to essentially to decline any proviso or earmark and say that you are not authorizing us to enter into that a specific funding arrangement, or you could pass the budget with the provisos and earmarks in them, and fully move, just let it go, or you could essentially pass them with some sort of note, right, to the governing committee, asking that the governing committee consider X, Y, or Z, or you could pass them with a note that is to Seattle City Council, right, saying like, we're approving this, but would like to engage in some form of discussion around either a specific proviso that is in the current budget or a discussion about provisos in the future. Those are essentially the various options that you have in front of you. And we don't have a strong recommendation for you because there is, as they are currently structured, no operating impact for us. So how matters as a policy position.
Sorry, Mark, lost just last like 10 seconds of what you'd said.
I am sorry. I was saying any impact to these provisos as they are structured. And so it really is a discretionary decision at your level as a policy.
Mark, I think we still missed you some. Were you saying that you're clarifying that there's no operating dollars available with these provisos? Is that accurate?
No, I'm sorry. I don't know where to stand. I'm in my office, so I don't know where to stand to make that better. What I am saying is that there is no operating impact with these provisos, right? Like they don't shift. Like we would have done all this stuff anyway, so that we don't have an opinion. Like, so we're saying this is truly a conversation for you all at your level from a policy perspective. I'm going to try turning off my camera and see if it helps.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark, and turn mine off too. In any way, it potentially might be helpful. I see Michael's hand raised. Yeah. One question for you, if you're able to, Mark, we can hear you, and if not, look to Meg for an answer as well of the scenarios that Mark laid out. Just knowing that we're already at December 8th and we're being approached by this either way, in many cases, this will still come to the governing committee, knowing that the governing committee won't convene until sometime in January, and thinking about obviously 2022 budget in 2022, what those scenarios might play in regards to what the timeliness, if we decide to continue to be re-engage with Seattle City Council back and forth on budget proviso languages, et cetera, other. But I'll let them answer the question. I'll go to Michael, then John.
So am I okay to go?
Not sure if staff had an answer or just insight on my question first, then we'll go to Michael, John, and Harold.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat your question? It got fuzzy for me.
All good, Mark, and I hope if there happens to be KCRHA staff with you in the office, helping get you better set up in a situation to dialogue with us for this meeting on any technical difficulties you're having. But the question I had raised is the scenarios you laid out is helpful for us in knowing that what we have to consider. And certainly this meeting up being an initial part of that discussion, and I'm sure the January board meeting for ourselves too, in regards to the budget, just realizing that we're talking about 2022 budget, getting into 2022 in January. A lot of those scenarios include an involvement in decisions by the governing committee. We'd be reaching some sort of strict timeline, I'm assuming, if we decided to not just accept as is, and if we needed to continue to re-engage back with our City of Seattle partners. Is that correct?
That is correct. So if you were to decline, so in the decision that you all could make that would have the most operational impact on the system would be to decline to accept the portions of the budget that are provisoed, which would transition. We would then not have authorization to spend the dollars as they are structured. And so would essentially jettison them into limbo, right? And so if I had a suggestion, it would probably be not to do that. But I will say that again, it's your call. If you were to make the decision to decline to move forward on the earmarks as they are, then there would need to be negotiation with Seattle City Council that would likely have to take place in January or over the course of January, and would cause delays as a new mayoral administration comes in and new council members join, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, that would have significant operational impact if you all were to make that choice. Yes.
Thanks, Mark. Go to Michael and then John.
So with no, thank you for the presentation. Very, very helpful. With no operational impact stated, I would like to see proactive messaging acknowledging those budget earmarks and provisos, especially since these are populations in those dollars that are least attended to and have been spoken to frequently in public comment. And so that would create some, common interests with the City of Seattle elected leaders and messaging that we're moving forward. And the sense that from RHA's perspective, we can say that we'll assess, evaluate, and consider incorporation these kind of earmarks and provisos into our regular budget in the future. So in other words, we're monitoring how it goes and could see if it can be regularized as part of the package in the future. In other words, we're not passive about it. And I think there should be some proactive messaging that, these steps are important as well. And we're watching, seeing, and I happen to, I see these efforts as very volunteer intensive too, and acknowledging the many, many people that are involved in moving this work forward. So that's just my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I have John Shalmanek and then Harold. Chair Harold.
Yes, thank you. Oops. Yeah, no, I'm off of mute. So I've got a couple of questions here. This sounds like we have been treated as at least going over the Seattle part, as a department of Seattle. It does not appear there's much programmatic discretion in the budget. Maybe I'm missing it. But Mark, could you expound on that, or maybe we expected this for the first year, that we would do what Seattle wanted to do and move through 2022, standing up our policy and program group?
Of course. I think the answer is that from my perspective, it's a little bit in between. So I do think that we have a pretty significant latitude in, for example, the dollars for new programming, right? So for example, there is funding in the budget, about 1.5 million, I want to say, and Tiffany, message me if I'm wrong, that is, for example, dedicated towards safe lots and other programming dedicated towards folks who are experiencing homelessness with vehicles, right? Like we are deeply supportive of that work. And, as Bill Curlin Hackett spoke to, we've set up a working group anticipating that we would want to focus more on this population that has been consistently overlooked. And so we have, been, and so in, for example, that line item, like all it does is.
Mark, can I just interrupt?
Sure.
I apologize, but that goes back to, that's what they would do to a department, to whichever department the name was at the City of Seattle. They would have allocated either through the mayor's budget or through the council changing the budget and doing that. They would have said, use it for this purpose. It may be a great purpose, and it may be absolutely the right purpose. But it gets to my basic question of, if the whole point of standing up this organization was to do things differently, why are we simply doing it the same?
Yeah. Okay. So in that instance, I would say that, this is to some degree a departmental interaction. And I think that this is the policy question that is in front of all of you, right? Is like, what do you want to say about this? I think, again, from our perspective, operationally, this does not impact us significantly, because the things that we talked about wanting to do, in terms of vehicle residency, are there. And many of the other things, because we said we were going to level fund in FY22, it's not alarming for us to see a proviso around, maintaining the tiny homes, because we were going to do that. I think that this speaks to board member Ramos's question of how can the dialogue between us and the city of Seattle be more proactive and more organized, so that we are, that what we see reflected in their work is stuff that we've been having conversations about for quite some time. I will say that like, and I want to be really clear about this, we had a really good and robust process with the mayor's office and with council, but it was very messy because of having to run a whole bunch of things in parallel because of where we were in stand up. How it should work is we should complete, frankly, our budget deliberations with you all, right, in late spring, and then transmit that over to the city and the county and any other subscribing ILA jurisdictions for, essentially ongoing deliberation. But I think that the tension is, always going to be between, the jurisdiction's legislative processes and the idea of a wholly independent regional authority. And, from my perspective, I think that there are really good arguments on both sides in terms of, the appropriate power of legislative branches in democracies, and then also the pursuit of the theory that we are all behind, which is, this independent agency that is, in pursuit of best practices that are data driven and articulated metrics, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that, again, I would say that it was, if you're asking me for my opinion on this, I don't think it necessarily makes sense to, at this level, decline to take the provisos because I don't think they have operational impact. But the decision I think that, you all do need to deliberate on and make a decision on so that we can support you is how would you like to be in conversation with your colleagues on the city council about, this kind of activity moving forward. And we are, as staff, right, can convene meetings between you all. We can, support those conversations. We can, draft letters if you want to send letter. Like, we'll do whatever you all direct us to do in this instance.
So I'll ask one question. I'm very satisfied with your answer. I appreciate it. My concern is bureaucracies do the same thing over and over and over again. And so that conversation may be not heard unless we really take some form of action now. Will we actually be able to weigh in on a 2023 budget to the mayor's office in the spring? Will the IB and the governing board will be able to weigh in on that?
Yes.
Okay. I think that it's. I was actually going to suggest we might do something different, but if the sense of the body is go ahead and accept the provisos and accept the budget that way, I would support that. I was going to suggest maybe we do 6 months of funding, and that would cause some urgency to speak with us. But I think I also don't want to imperil or cause any difficulty to the agencies that we are funding with this. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Board Member Shulman Neck. We go to my fellow co-chair, Harold Odom, and then we'll have Adrian and Simha next.
Well, I'm going to agree with John. It does seem like it's them telling us what to do, and if we're standing up this new agency, we are standing up this new agency. It's not to have a big brother. We hired a CEO, he's hired staff, and we believe we're competent. These provisos, I've been in the city where I've seen them, how they work, and I don't think we should have government telling us what agencies or what to do when we have a CEO and a staff members who come to us. And I would definitely say that this board should be in direct conversation with the city if they're going to continue doing this. been on the campaign, we've heard the campaign on the other side of the city, and we know how agencies provoke that. We don't want any messiness coming over to King County Regional Homeless Authority. We're intending about doing things different, and I would just like to push back on if it's going to cause you any operational problem, Mark. I would not say. I would say that I would accept the provisos, but if it's not, I'd push back on them. I'd like to hear from you on that. But future-wise, I don't want the city or the governing board to tell us what to do. You are the one who we're going forward with, and we didn't hire a city council member or a county council member or anybody else to do this for us. And so I just want to make sure that's clear, that we have a shield around us, and those shields will be up and running all the time and not being directed as a department what to do. So that's my concern only.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the vote of confidence. I think that, to answer the direct question, I do feel that to put the funding in limbo by declining to take up the provisos could have potential negative impact, like significantly negative impact on the system and on the people we serve. And so, my counsel would be not to do that if at all possible. I think it would be good, for us all to, again, so the normal process would be, and this speaks to the question that Board Member Cholmanek asked, right? But the normal process would be, we would interact with you all, we would interact with the community, shape a budget and a plan, bring it to you all for your input and approval, then bring it to the governing committee for their input and approval, and then it would transmit, right? And so, you all will have the capacity to substantially influence, FY23 and beyond. I think that the other thing to put potentially a finer point on, specifically for the FY23 budget process, will be that we're going to rebid the whole system in that, right? So the FY23 discussion, I anticipate being very robust and needing a lot of input from the whole community, and also you all via a standing subcommittee, I hope, and also via the monthly convening of the full board.
Thanks, Mark and Chair Oldham. We'll go on to Adrian and then Simha.
Thanks, Nate, and thank you everyone for your comments. I'm largely in agreement with many of the sentiments being mentioned at the moment. I think one way to address this is to express appreciation to the City Council for increasing the amount of money that they're directing towards homelessness, showing that they see it as much of a priority as we do. The concern I have is one raised by both Harold and John, in that if the City Council or any of the Sound Cities or the King County, or any government entity funder, for example, decides to be very specific about what programs need to be funded, this undermines the expertise and authority of the Regional Homelessness Authority. And so I think that perhaps we can invite the Seattle City Council and other funders to participate in conversations, but ensure that the role that they're playing here is that they are adhering to the priorities that are being approved both by the implementation board, which has representation from the city, from the county, from Sound Cities, and the board itself, which also has very specific representation from city council members, county council members, so that their role is to approve the priorities that are being stated, but not fund specific programs. My concern is that they're funding very specific programs, and if that becomes the pattern, then we are not relying on the expertise of the Regional Homelessness Authority.
Thank you, Board Member Quinn. Okay, we'll go to Simha.
appreciate the discussion. Actually, I thank you, Adrian. I think that expressed it really well. I think we should accept this budget as is. We want to ensure stability for the programs that, as Michael mentioned, are so important in this coming year. But going forward in the future, we want to minimize the earmarks and provisos that would create restrictions on our ability to implement evidence-based approaches. So maybe that's sort of more, it sounds like the FY23 budget will really be a time where we can really focus in on that. Having a lot of robust conversations with the city council and county council and mayor's office to ensure that, as Adrian said, they understand our priorities, but not focus on funding specific programs. So, but for right now, I'd say we take this budget as it is and ensure that we've got the funds to take care of people for this coming year.
Thank you, Board Member Reddy. Any other board members with questions, comments for the board and or Mark and Meg? So back to Mark and Meg, seeing none. Questions for you in regards to upcoming timeline, at least where we had some good discussion, even thinking about the role that we would play in the budget process with our partners. In terms of what we have ahead from now and through January, would we anticipate staff coming back to us in the January 12th meeting and further discussions about the budget items? And I'm not sure if the governing committee has a meeting even scheduled quite yet to talk about this as well. I'm just kind of curious in terms of what's looked upon on us in terms of the upcoming timeline and potential point of action or vote, so people understand the roles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to try and turn my video back on just for the sake of the viewing public. I don't like when public officials are off camera, but if it starts acting up again, I'll turn it back off. So as of this moment, we are honing in on a January 13th potential date for a governing committee meeting. And fingers crossed, we get that across the scheduling finish line. So on January 12th, we would come to you with all the I's and T's dotted and crossed. As Meg mentioned, there are a couple items that we anticipate doing some slight updating on that are largely in the carry forward columns, right? Like money that was not expended in 21 that may find a home at the authority for expenditure in FY22. So we would bring you that budget for approval on the 12th, and that's when we would ask you to take a vote. The importance of the now 2 months of conversation that we've had leading up to that is, and actually I do think this is good, right? The opportunity to have a robust public dialogue about the budget, as opposed to bringing you a thing and essentially, dark of night passing it without enough opportunity to really have conversation. So that would be the likely path forward with the approval of you all on that path, obviously.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Any further questions? And Mark, does that wrap up your CEO report for today's meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it does.
All right, thank you. And just for a time check for everyone's sake too, we're coming on 3:15 here. Just want to make sure, and I believe, okay, and just want to make sure that we're getting through what we have to get through here. I had, as I mentioned, just as a bit of a time check item, last month's meeting was hoping to still have a discussion about a potential election on replacement co-chair, replacing my seat. I will still be on the board, but replacing me as co-chair. And in addition to elections on potentially treasurer and secretary, with the idea that we would do an offline poll to gauge everyone's interest on subcommittee works. But obviously the discussion that we've had from Mark and Meg on the current state of play of the budget, in addition to the policies discussion that we have from Ann, Peter, and point in time count from Mark and others as well. I just want to make sure we're obviously making some good time today to cover all that. So know that we'll potentially postpone that conversation for January, but want to make space for the two larger other items that we have for the rest of our time together this afternoon. And with that, I will move it on to Ann and Peter Martins and Peter Lynn to talk about the policies before us today. Ann and Peter.
Hi there. These are both pretty straightforward. I will start with the public records request policy. I'm not going to read it to you because it's 4 pages long. I am your public records officer. I can tell you that the policy was reviewed by our legal counsel to make sure it adheres to the letter and the spirit of the law. Washington, of course, has a very strong public records law and is always interpreted in favor of disclosure. So this as this details the procedure for making a public records request, both what we are asking of the requester and what the RHA will do in response, and just ensures that it is clear and available to the public. It will be posted on the website, and we will have a form that people can fill out on the website in addition to being able to call or send a letter or show up in person. Are there questions about the policy itself? Okay.
The other policy that's in front of the board is with regard to contracts and document signing. And it is also a fairly straightforward administrative policy setting who is authorized to sign documents and contracts at various levels. It also approves the authority, notably, to accept electronic document signature. And that is one of the things that we need the authority of the IB to support, so that we can demonstrate that the agency has formally adopted electronic signatures. This is an extremely efficient way to collect signatures on documents, and strongly recommend that you support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann and Peter. Any questions from the board members for Ann and Peter on these two policy proposals for us? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve both the electronic signature and the public disclosure release policy.
So moved.
Terry Anderson, so move.
Okay, I think I caught Simha making the motion as sounding as someone else. I'll count the other individual.
I'll second Carrie Anderson.
Pastor Anderson, I'll count you as a second for that motion. Any further discussion? Okay, and Steph, I believe we can do a voice vote on this. Is that correct? Or do we need to do a roll call?
You are correct that we can do a voice vote on this.
Okay, all in favor to approve this motion, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? And these policies are also approved. Thank you, Ann and Peter, for that. Okay, moving along, we're almost getting back to being on time now. Point in time count, back over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to acknowledge for the record that board member Gordon McHenry has joined us. Welcome, board member. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. Is that visible for everyone?
Yes.
I am going to turn off my video because I'm concerned that overwhelmed there has been some point in time. Well, just be away. Much of it has not included a rust on, and so I'm hopeful we can.
Mark, I just want to make sure everyone that wanting to say too is also being heard appropriately and correctly. Unfortunately, your audio is skipping every other second or so. Not sure if other folks could also be able to turn off their cameras, if that might potentially assist, in addition to if other KCRHA staff might also have a copy of the PowerPoint so that they can share their screen. Maybe that could potentially help relieve some lag from Mark's laptop connection.
Yeah, Naomi, can I just share?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Naomi, can you share the presentation?
Yes.
All right. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
And I am moving to a different part of the office to see if that makes my Wi-Fi connection stronger. Are people hearing me all right?
You are coming in much clearer. Thank you, Mark.
All right. What I was saying is just that, there's been some community conversation about the point in time count. Some of that has not necessarily included, I think, a full appreciation of what the point in time count is or is not. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to clarify what it is and what our approach is, and then have a discussion if needed. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the point in time count is well, actually, there should be a correction in this slide. Sorry, I didn't catch this, Naomi. The point in time count is actually two things. It is an annual count of folks who are experiencing sheltered homelessness, and it is a biannual, as in every other year, not twice a year, count of folks experiencing unsheltered homelessness on a single night in January. That is the HUD promulgated definition of a point in time count. And so they are two distinct methodologies, right? So the HUD requires that we conduct a biannual, as in every other year, count of folks experiencing unsheltered homelessness, and that all the counts are planned, coordinated, and carried out locally. Importantly, there is no standardized methodology for how to do an unsheltered count. That is not a thing that HUD has ever sort of laid down. There are a number of different sampling techniques that communities use across the country. They can be roughly broken down into two different strategies. One is called a complete canvas strategy, where a community tries to cover the entire of its geography, every nook and cranny, go all the places, count all the people. Very few communities still use a complete canvas strategy, to my knowledge, because it is quite difficult to execute. And then there's a sort of a sampling frame methodology, where communities will go where they think people are likely to be, count them, and then add some multiplier that they then submit as what the number is. Next slide, please. So it is pretty widely known that the point in time count creates an undercount of folks experiencing homelessness. This is specific to our region, particularly in subregions outside of Seattle. Many of the folks who are human service planners or otherwise, engaged in trying to provide support for folks experiencing homelessness outside of Seattle Metro often report that there is not a significant engagement at their level. The PIT often relies on what a few volunteers see during a few hours in early morning in a neighborhood in which may be unfamiliar to them. And there's a lot of ways for data to go missing. It also asks those volunteers oftentimes to sometimes there are questionnaires, right, where they actually ask people questions. Other times, those volunteers are just asked to make decisions about what they, sort of assume about a person, and including race, ethnicity, disability status, et cetera. Because it is the only thing that is required nationally by HUD with regard to a census of folks experiencing homelessness, it has become the standard, but it doesn't necessarily make it good data. And in fact, there have been a number of reports, two from the Government Accountability Office, one in 2020 and one in 2021, both of which offered some critiques of the point in time count. And there have also been just a number of methodologists who are, researchers in the homelessness space who have raised questions about whether or not that is the best way to get data about our neighbors experiencing unsheltered homelessness and to support them. Next slide. So we are committed to really reimagining what the point in time count looks like, and doing that in a way that is driven by the voices of folks who are most impacted. We are developing a research plan in collaboration with the LEC, service providers, and other stakeholders across King County. And that our current thinking is that we're going to carry out a multimodal, actually mixed methods, qualitative and quantitative engagement that will include a head count that meets HUD's unsheltered point in time count requirements. We're in active conversation, like right now, with HUD to get approval of that methodology. We don't have it yet. It is and I want to be really clear about that. What we are in the process of having conversation around is called a methodology exemption. It's not even a full waiver. It happens quite common. It is very ordinary for HUD to grant methodology exceptions. And so that is the conversation that is happening currently. Next slide. So in our point in time count for 2022, we anticipate doing a head count of unsheltered individuals that is attached to a qualitative engagement. We will do the annual count of folks who are in shelters or in programming. That count is run, it's a HMIS data pull. So it is a very straightforward exercise that is done annually. And right, that like we intend to develop a qualitative data collection strategy, again, with all those folks I previously listed. Next slide. The preliminary timeline that we have outlined and are currently operating under, as you got to make a plan and do a plan, is that from December to February, we're really focused on doing the engagement with the LEC and other folks who are experiencing homelessness or frontline service providers, et cetera, to get the necessary input on a data collection strategy. As you can see on this slide, right, we have a long time that has already started, actually, where we're engaging folks who are experiencing homelessness or have lived experience of homelessness to inform it. Beginning in January, we will begin to engage the provider community, and beginning around the same time, we'll also engage some of our government partners. Then about mid-February, we anticipate releasing a data plan or data collection strategy, and then ramping up whatever staffing or other kinds of support are necessary to do that data collection. We are currently planning to collect data through the month of March, analyze that data in the month of April, and that will allow us to meet the currently forecasted submission deadline at HUD, which we anticipate being towards the end of April. That is not confirmed. I always want to be really clear about communication from our federal partners. That is an expectation. It is not this is the confirmed date. We obviously will be paying close attention to any shifts in that timeline. In early summer, we anticipate distributing, some form of community report. So right now, we are engaging stakeholders through a series of workshops and conversations over the next several months to build that research agenda. We are working closely with HUD and obtaining the exception that we need in order to ensure that our approach is acceptable to them. That all of this should be seen in the backdrop of the pursuit of other more significant and ongoing data strategies, including by name lists, that would allow us to have a dynamic picture of how many people are experiencing homelessness in the county and their specific needs, as well as partnership with our King County partners to develop some other ways of looking at information that we hope will be available in the near term, and certainly, we'll keep this board informed about as they become available to us. So that's it. Happy to have any conversation or answer any questions.
Mark, may I jump in? This is Adrienne.
Sure.
Thanks. So I'm trying to better understand the difference between what you're approaching, how your approach right now, and what has been done historically, because only based on this brief information, it sounded very similar to me. I know as the count has been previously developed by Skitch, then taken over by All Home, people who knew were people who were experiencing homelessness lived in different geographic areas. And so they would largely be providers. I hear a difference you're saying is that it's more work with Lived Experience Coalition, which I think is great. But providers would identify and outreach workers would identify where people tend to live. And then so people within those geographic areas would do the unsheltered count in those areas. And then there would be qualitative assessment as well through sampling to try to get much more granular information from people. And so on the surface of things, it sounds like the approach you're suggesting sounds similar, but please tell me the pieces I'm missing.
Thanks, Adrienne. There are some significant similarities, and I think that's part of the reason why, again, just in terms of like what the community conversation has been, I in candor did not expect as much conversation because of we're taking a step to continue a direction that there is precedent for, right? I think the two big differences, the two differences, they're not massive. The two differences I think in what we're thinking about for 22, actually maybe three. One is when we do it. And so in our proposed methodology that if we get the exception from HUD would be what we move forward with, our sampling frame would be over the month of March as opposed to a narrower frame in January. The second thing, and this is a little in the weeds, but we are proposing to use a respondent-driven sampling framework, which is, I'm happy to talk about with anyone who cares about it. But essentially, the bottom line is we would be starting in one place, recruiting people and saying, can you refer in 3 people that you know, right? And so, and each set of respondents through those referrals are called waves. And so I think our desire, our hope anyway, is that by wave 3 or 4, we are talking to people who are not service connected. And so what we're learning about from a qualitative perspective is that what's not present in the system for them, right? Like what's missing and why are the reasons why they are avoiding any of the things that we are offering. And then the third thing that I would lift up as different is in that framework, we're proposing a very specific sampling frame that I think is a little bit different from, I think, what the previous iteration had been, which was a sampling frame to be sure, but was as you said, right? Like people would go into specific areas where people were, you knew where folks were or had, a hunch that folks were and count. We're saying that we want to use this respondent-driven sampling framework and then attach a head count to it and then add the force multiplier there. So there, again, like I will go back to what I said at the outset, which is I actually very much agree with you that like this is not some sort of unbelievable shift. It is, but what it does represent, if approved, is that we will not do the sort of traditional, 1 night or 10-day count in January. We'll have a data collection framework and timeline that is different.
Thank you, Mark. Seeing a follow from Adrian, we'll go to Gordon and then Michael Ramos.
Thanks, Chair Nate. Mark, appreciate this briefing. I think it's really important for a couple of reasons. One, to understand that the authority is wanting to address some known gaps with the point in time count and improve quality, thoroughness and quality, and also it's an example of living into the values of the lived experience of folks who are unsheltered or temporarily sheltered. So I appreciate that because it does involve compliance and it does involve money. My question is, how confident do you have? What level of confidence do you and the team have that HUD will approve this new approach or a modified approach? That's the first question. And then the second question is, in terms of when we traditionally receive money from HUD, when they approve it, if is there likely to be a delay in the receipt of funds from HUD funds, that is? Those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you, board member. On the first question, we have, I would say right now, today, I have high confidence, like based on the communications that we've had over the last week. And again, because I want to be very clear from a letter of the law and not misrepresenting federal partners, we are not approved. I have confidence we can be approved, right? I don't think that what we are asking for is such a significant deviation from sort of prior things, and that we have been in a discussion about how to ensure that what we do is compliant with what HUD needs us to submit and on the time frame they need us to submit it on, right? So like we are doing our due diligence there to make sure that we are being good partners to them as well, and considering their needs with regard to this work, which speaks to the second point, which is that our timeline is built off of what we expect their filing deadline to be. And so there should be no ding possible, right? Like we should file the thing that they need from us on time. And so there should be no complication around either the NOFA scoring or the receipt of funding.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member McHenry. We'll go to Board Member Ramos.
Mark, thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you for communicating around this decision, the rationale behind it, and the plan that you're going to execute. Very much appreciated and well laid out. Going ahead into 2023, I would hope that we have an anticipatory conversation around what's been learned through this process so that the implementation board can weigh in deliberation with you going forward. It's something that had there been more time, perhaps we could have discussed ahead of time in one of our meetings in terms of looking ahead to, which helps us in a position as board members to support, communicate appropriately about the decision and be supportive of what's coming ahead. So in any case, thanks for the presentation, and look forward to seeing how things go pending HUD approval.
Thank you, board member.
Thank you, Michael. We'll go to Simha.
Just keying off of Michael's comment, I think it sounds like great. This might actually be a really good thing for our systems performance committee when we get it up and running to take on as something to sort of keep an eye on and evaluate over time.
I would very much appreciate the establishment of the system performance subcommittee and some other subcommittees that I think we could pull into some ongoing work. So thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we will go to the next item of business, which is, thank you, Mark, for the board calendar for 2022. And I'm gonna try and run this through here. We're gonna possibly have an election for a new co-chair here. Board, we will now hear from KCRHA staff who will introduce the proposed calendar for 2022, which per the ILA requires a vote by the board for approval. So I'll patch it over to KCRHA staff.
Thank you. I confess, in walking down the hall, I didn't bring my binder, so the resolution is not in front of me. But what is in front of you all in your various positions is a resolution that contains the proposed dates for your regularly scheduled meetings for the calendar year of 2022. In those proposed, thank you, somehow, in those proposed meetings, the only thing I would note is we made no changes to the regularity, right? So it is just the sequence that you're already on. And we have just mapped that through the calendar year.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions from Mark? It mentions location and time and space. Since we're obviously still working due to OPMA 2, meeting virtually, the language as it's currently written is totally okay if we pass it, right? Not noting a specific location in that regard, or the fact that doesn't include 2022 or any subsequent years.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Section 1 notes that the place of all regular meetings shall be on a virtual platform hosted by the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. So our understanding is that satisfies the location need, and that should we change location or halfway through the year determine that we'd like to begin meeting in person again, noticing that would be sufficient to make that change.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mark. All right. See, unless there's any other questions, I will entertain a motion to approve the 2022 Implementation Board calendar.
So moved.
Motion from Adrian. Do I have a second?
Carrie Anderson, second.
Pastor Anderson, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to do a voice vote on this one. All in favor to approve the calendar, please vote by saying aye.
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 I'll say aye myself. Any nays? Any abstentions? It is so moved. Thank you and done. Thank you so much, Mark and staff. All right, we got 15 minutes here. We are going to do this here. So I'm going to put into the chat what I had gone over with you all in our November board meeting last month. And building on even what Simha and others were discussing earlier, obviously there are topics and a lot of the work that KCRHA staff has been doing that could be supported by us being more involved in having the development of subcommittees and at a deeper bench beyond just the co-chairs roles that Harold and I have assumed for you with you in the last 14 months or so. In that capacity, I recall when we were asking Mark the question of which of any of these positions for officers and subcommittees would be helpful in terms of priority. And if I remember right, Mark, and unless that's changed, let us know. But you said all of them. In that light, wanted to use this opportunity in our December meeting before we get into January to vote for a new co-chair to replace me in working with Harold, but also use this as an opportunity. And for folks tuning in the public and audience, the link in that I've shared is essentially, if you go to our implementation board meeting on May 12th on our webpage, you'll see a document that we passed in that May meeting approving the formation of an executive committee, in addition to a handful of subcommittees, including a work plan and performance committee, a budget committee that will be chaired by the treasurer, a systems planning committee, and a communication and board development committee. With that, just wanted to make sure that folks had visibility to seeing what those roles and responsibilities are for these, but I'll start with the co-chair election and slot. And thank you, Mark, for definitely still all of these as an open consideration in a way that we, again, as board members can be best in line in working with staff. After today's meeting, co-chair Odom and I have talked with Mark and staff about doing a poll with all of you afterwards about which of these subcommittees you'd like to take part in yourself, but really want to focus on the limited time that we have here to have open discussion for those who are interested to express interest in running for a co-chair, treasurer, and secretary. And with that, I will stop and see if anyone who has would like to formally present interest in the co-chair position. Simha, I see your hand raised.
I'm sure there, I'd like to throw my hat in the ring and stand for that co-chair position, and it would be big shoes to fill. But I really find this work really exciting and would really like to support the board and the RHA a little bit more deeply if possible.
Great, thank you, board member. Ready? Any other comments, questions for Simha? Self-nominations or nomination of other board members? Just to open the floor for other board members to. All right. Any other nominations or considerations for a co-chair? If not, I would entertain a motion for Simha in terms of taking over as a co-chair and working with co-chair Odom, effective today.
I would like to enthusiastically put forward a motion to approve Board Member Simha as co-chair.
I would second that.
All right, we have a nomination motion from Adrian in addition to a second from Board Member Shalmanak. Any discussion?
Oh,
Go ahead, Board Member McHenry.
just quickly to appreciate the spirit in which Simha self-nominated, and I look forward, assuming that others think likewise, look forward to benefiting from his leadership. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Board Member. Well, let's see how this vote goes. No, I'm kidding. With that, any other further comments or discussion? Okay, seeing none. All right, let's do a roll call vote for this one. There's a lot of legalese connections to the role of the co-chair. I'm sure our staff would appreciate we formalize in the form of a roll call vote. Naomi or staff, can you walk us through to the roll call vote?
For sure. Carrie Anderson.
Pastor Anderson, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
Okay, we'll roll back to Pastor Carrie Anderson. Nate Caminos.
Aye.
Paula Carvalho. John Chalmanak.
Aye.
Gordon McHenry.
Yes.
Harold Odom.
Yes.
Damian Patnaugh. Adrian Quinn.
Yes.
Michael Ramos.
Yes.
Sarah Rankin. Simha Reddy.
Yes.
Juanita Spotted Elk.
Yes.
Pastor Anderson, are you there?
Looks like he's unmuted, but not hearing him. Pastor Anderson, if you're able to hear us, or okay. Maybe we'll find a way to be able to, if we have the next 8 minutes to get his attention for him to possibly also answer in the chat, if that's another outlet for him. I believe he might be coming out of transitioning to another meeting. He might be mobile at the moment, but otherwise, Naomi, that's the rest of the roll call for the board.
Yes. At this time, we have 7 yays and 5 absentees, and the motion passes.
Thank you. And just recognizing we do have quorum with those 7 votes too, in addition to, despite while with a pending vote from Pastor Anderson as well. But congratulations, Board Member Henry, or now co-chair Reddy.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Anderson. Question, can you hear me?
Yes, Pastor Anderson, vote for.
I had lost my connection for some reason, but
we are so far 7 ayes and 0 nays or abstentions on board member. Fortunately, due to the connection with Pastor Anderson, maybe we'll be able to get you. Pastor Anderson, if you're able to hear me, okay. We are at 7 ayes in support of Board Member Reddy as a new co-chair of the implementation board. If you're able to, maybe I'll call on you before we conclude at 4 o'clock today. We've got 7 more minutes left to see if your network connection clears up, or if you're able to put in the chat your vote for that nomination. We'll want to make sure that you're documented and recorded and such in today's meeting. Board Member Reddy, any comments for you or thoughts from you before we move on to Treasurer and Secretary?
Yeah, well, first, thank you, everybody. But the bigger thing is, I just want to say thank you to you, Nate. Your leadership with you and Harold has been incredible this last year. Helped give birth to the RHA. So thank you for making this all happen for us. I'm really grateful and looking forward to getting to know each of our board members a little bit more, more well over the next coming months.
Absolutely. Thank you, Board Member Reddy, and thanks to all my fellow board members for all the very thoughtful notes in the chat and emails and texts in the last several weeks or so. While I'm stepping down in co-chair, certainly will want to still be very much involved in all the good work of the authority and alongside you as a board member. And board member or co-chair, Chair Reddy, I won't spring on you facilitating the rest of the next 6 minutes. If okay with you, I'll continue facilitating the remainder of the election slots that we have available. And in doing so, thank you, Pastor Anderson, for the record, just noting in the chat that he is documented and voting yes for board members Reddy's nomination and approval as our next co-chair. Thank you, Pastor Anderson. Okay, moving on to treasurer. This is a key role for us, obviously, in a lot of the work with the budget, the finance committee, the budget committee itself. Any nominations from the board for treasurer? Okay, we'll come back to that too. Any for secretary? The secretary position will work with press releases and communications, as well as our committee membership lists. And of course, reviewing meeting minutes. All right, well, I look forward to being a board member in the January meeting and nominating other people in that respect. But hopefully that we will be able to look out for a poll from staff relatively soon for any board member interest in each of the subcommittees. And maybe we can do a recap in the January meeting. And maybe we can identify some folks in each of these subcommittees for nominations for those positions. Before I open it up to, I'm making sure that we do have time for others who would just like to share comments or items amongst other board members. Before we conclude, recognizing Mark, you have your hand raised for anything that you'd like to share or add.
Thank you, outgoing co-chair. First, I just want to add a deep appreciation for your work. I don't think people would have insight into this, but like many days were spent like texting Nate or calling Nate and being like, you know what I should do with this thing. So I just want to create some transparency around that for the sake of appreciation, and deeply grateful that you're not going far. I feel obligated to lift up. We do need a treasurer and we do need a secretary. Like that is a thing that we need from an oversight perspective. Like it is just really critical. I also want to lift up that I did reach out to each of you last week asking for input and am hopeful that folks who have not responded have an opportunity to respond sometime, before the end of this week, so that we can do some FY22 planning. One of the questions that I asked you all was to help me better understand how to support you. And so if you are concerned about like sort of a level of support and stepping into one of these roles, and that is why you don't want to potentially consider it, please just let us know what support you need. We are happy to provide it. I will confess to, in this moment though, not having the level of insight necessary in order to modify your experience so that you would feel comfortable, right? And so if there's some information that folks are able to provide, that would be helpful. But I just want to underscore what the co-chair said, which is like these are mission critical roles, and so I need to ask of someone to occupy them.
Thank you, Mark. And now in support of co-chairs Simha Reddy and Harold Odom in that regard, and talked a lot about the sustainability and growth of the authority and the work that we have ahead of us. That synergy between the implementation board and staff certainly has areas that we can strengthen to better support the work of the authority overall. And so I definitely want to make that a focal point for the January meeting. Co-chair Odom, you have your hand raised.
Yes. So, Semi, you do have big shoes to fill. In the last 14 months, it's been that long. It seems like we have become good friends, Nate, best buddies, and workmates. We have had to do 2 full-time jobs for a few months there, and I don't think anybody realizes that. And I had COVID, and you had to carry me through some of that time. And I'd just like to say a great deal of thank yous. I don't know how I could have made it through without you. You really did help, especially when I had COVID. I couldn't think, I thought I was having to wear diapers at one point when I got out of the hospital, and I said, I don't even know what I'm doing. I really couldn't think. And you were patient with me, and I thank you so much for your help. Semi said he's going to have big shoes to fill, and yes, he is. So I just like that. I don't know how many more thank yous I could say. But also I want to transition to what Mark said as well. Nate and I have been working a whole lot, and we appreciate the help that when we have had to call on you, special meetings that you've come through. We're going into 2022, and we're going to need help. I'm going to need help. Somebody's going to need help. Mark's going to need help from the whole board. This is an action board. We are keeping other entities away from us. And I think the implementation board, we're shielded, as I said, but we have to step up and give our opinions, our thoughtful research. Every single one of us here has a job that's deeply embedded in the community, and you're all leaders. Every single one of you here. If we cover the whole King County, I would say all of us would have an interest in each part or each sector of the county, and some of us throughout the country. I remember when former board member Helen Howe was here, I was just so excited to be working with her because she had so many different ways she was including into so many different departments and agencies and even the White House. And now she's working at the Regional Homeless Authority with us. But every one of us has some special point we can bring in. And I just like to say to each one of you, if you can intentionally, next month, bring something, let's start building some boards, some subcommittees, get a treasurer and a secretary. And I like to start off the year with everyone being intentional on doing something creative for the next year and helping this agency move forward. We've stood it up, we've given birth to it. Let's pat it on the butt and get it down the road. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Chair Odom, and thanks for everyone's again kind remarks. I'm not deflecting. I'm appreciative. I'm also wanting to make sure we use the rest of our time focused on what's next. We are missing, unfortunately, board members Damian Patnout and Paula Carvalho. We want to make sure that we follow up with them on what was discussed in today's meeting in anticipation for what we have in January. Also heard from a lot of you wanted to try and make time and space. Obviously, this is a jam-packed agenda for our 2-hour time together this afternoon, but we'll look to our co-chairs and framing future meetings to make sure that there's time for each of you at the end of the meeting too, to have a chance to share your thoughts, ideas, upcoming events, or areas of interest on the work that you do and how that intersects with the authority as well. But with that, any last minute shout outs before we adjourn today's meeting? Seeing none, thanks so much for a tremendous year. A year of growth, a lot that we've been able to accomplish since our formation 14 months ago. Congratulations to you, Chair Reddy, and thanks again for Mark and all the great staff at the RHA as well for what you do. Look forward to engaging you more in the weeks ahead, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone on Wednesday, January 12th at 2 p.m. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Nate.
So much, Nate.
Thank you, Nate.
Happy holidays, everyone.